Welcome everybody to tonight's class, which is focused as we near Pesach, we near the holiday of Passover. There's a lot to prepare, not just to prepare in cleaning out our chametz, cleaning out our bread products and all the different themes that we were focusing on with the 4 cups of wine, and we have our whole Seder on the night, and it's a really amazing way to connect back in our heritage and our history. The spiritual underpinnings of the holiday are very powerful for our personal life, right? Every single story in the Torah, every single holiday that we experience is internally as well. It's happening within us, everyone. So, when King David is talking about fighting wars, and today, unless you're in Ukraine or a few other places, you're not fighting any wars, you can relate to Tehillim because you're fighting an inner war. That every day we have negative tendencies that are trying to draw us down, and we're continually trying to fight that with our soul and our positive side. And everything is like that. Everything that we're reading about is an internal example. When the Torah is obsessed with building the temple in Jerusalem, you're like, well, I don't have a temple now. Well, yes, because you are trying to build your body. You're trying to make your life into a place that God can dwell in. The outer temple in Jerusalem is it's not symbolic. It is a place where God dwells, but God says, "V'asuli mikdash shechanti betocha," make me a temple so I can dwell in you. So everything we learn about is also not only external, because we are indeed commemorating leaving a physical place in northern Africa in Egypt, but it's also the Egypt within ourselves. Liberation from our inner enslavement. What does that mean? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And in order to properly put into context why in Judaism we're so obsessed with celebrating the time, like we're going to celebrate Pesach on the night at the moment of Pesach every year. It has to happen at that exact moment. We have to eat the matzah. We have to eat the matzah before midnight, like the original Jewish people did. So there's a big emphasis on time. Why? So I've touched on this before with some of you, and I want to kind of lay it out more comprehensively. How do we look at time historically? So in the ancient times, and I'm sure there are some cultures today, time was looked at as cyclical. So you have springtime, summertime, fall, winter, and then again, and again, and again, and the leaves die out, and the tree blooms again, and the bears hibernate, and the flowers bloom again, and we go again, and to every season, turn, right? Not just from King Solomon and from the Beatles, every season, a time for everything, and it's not going anywhere. It's just a cycle. Everyone lives, dies, regenerates, and we go on like this forever. Comes Judaism, comes monotheism, comes the Torah, comes religion in general, not all religions, but some, and says, no, it's not just cyclical. There's a beginning and there's an end. We're going somewhere. We had a beginning to time, right? Bereshit bara Elokim, that there was once nothing and God began to form reality, which science caught up to only very recently with the Big Bang Theory. The idea that there is a beginning to time. And we're going somewhere. Where are we going to? We're going to the redemption. We're going to the time of Mashiach. And there's a beginning and there's an end. We're on a journey somewhere. So you could almost think of it, instead of it being cyclical, it's linear. There's a beginning and there's an end. Okay, we have 2 so far, right? Comes the revelation of the mystical side of Judaism, the Kabbalah, and explains that actually, deep down, they're both true, but you have to combine them. Time has a beginning and an end, but there's also a cyclical nature because every year at a certain time, you are going to line up to that original event. And the example they give to most think of it mentally is like a spiral, right? That you start here and 1 year goes around a full 4 seasons and you end up in the same place, but you're 1 level higher and 1 level higher. And we're trying to make our way up in 2022 or in 5782, we're almost at the time of redemption, the beginning time, and we're directly in line at every single moment of every day with all the times of the year going back thousands of years at that time of the year. So there's a certain potent spiritual energy to time. When Shabbat comes in, you are directly in line with the original Shabbat, when God ceased to create anew. When I was thinking about how when Shabbat ends, sometimes in yeshiva, you'd feel a little bit sad, a little bit depressed. I think because that's the moment where God did tzimtzum. That's the moment where God first hid his light. That's every time is connected to the original time. So Pesach, Passover, the reason we're so meticulous about celebrating it at that time, I know that during COVID and quarantine, some people wanted to schedule Pesach like a month ahead or before because it was too hard to get the family together. We don't believe in that in a traditional Jewish context, because that night of the 15th of Nisan is the moment the Jewish people were taken out of Egypt and the power of freedom reigns. This is the time on Pesach night and throughout the holiday where we have the power to free ourselves from Egypt. And even if you don't live in Egypt, you can free yourself from your inner Egypt, because Egypt, we know in Hebrew, is Mitzrayim. Limitation in Hebrew is Meitzarim. It's the same letters. The same letters for Egypt is the same letters for limitation, constraints, inner blockages. So leaving Egypt means leaving our blockages, leaving what's holding us back from our true inner greatness. Just a few other cool Hebrew facts that I love to illustrate this point. Progression in Hebrew, to progress, to move forward, is mitkadem. But the word kedem that it comes from means past. Kedem means the past. So what's going on in Hebrew? That progression means past. But the idea is that we're constantly trying to connect back to an original truth that we have inside. Like, we might have more knowledge in 2022, but we don't necessarily have more wisdom. We're trying to like always connect back to the original source and a truth that we know inside that's been covered over. And yes, we have to build on that through our unique lens. It's not enough to like become like the people of the past, but there's an inner truth in reality that we're trying to always tap into. And another idea is that we know that the calendar goes according to the Gregorian calendar is based on the sun. The Jewish calendar is based on the moon. We incorporate the sun as well for leap years, but it's more connected to the moon. The time we're in now is the beginning of the Hebrew calendar. Nisan, this new month of Nisan, is the first Hebrew month. There's an argument in the Talmud. Do we start from Rosh Hashanah or do we start from the beginning of Nisan? And both have weight to their opinion. And we count the calendar based on Nisan, but spiritually we count the new year and in other ways too, based on Rosh Hashanah. And year in Hebrew, anybody know what the word for year in Hebrew is? It's Shana. Shana, year, can also mean Shena, which means sleep, or Yashan, which means old. So the concept of Shana, of the Gregorian perspective, is the idea of like the cyclical thing we were talking about. To every season turn, it's like asleep. It's the same thing. Whereas the word for month in Hebrew, which is how we base it on the moon, is Chodesh. Chodesh is connected to Chadash. Chadash means newness. Hitchadshut means renewal. So the Jewish perspective is that every moment is a new moment. Every moment you can tap into a newness, a renewal. You're not stuck in your past. You don't have to just ruminate on the past and be anxious about the future, which is what most of us do. We're never living present. We're always either ruminating on past failures or we're anxious about what's to come, what's going to be. But then we're never living. We're never living because to live means to be in the present moment. The present moment is all we have. It's only where our true existence is. So it's a good opportunity now in Nisan to start working on this idea of detaching ourselves from the weight of the past and to look at the present moment and say, I am choosing to see the beauty and the life in this present moment. I am not defined by my actions of the past. And I don't care right now about the future, everything that's could happen or might go wrong. I am valuing the power of this new moment. And that's presence. That's hitchadshut. That is renewal, because every moment's a new opportunity to connect to Hashem and to grow. It's actually said, according to some sages, that the resurrection of the dead, Tchiyat HaMesim, will occur in the month of Nisan, will occur in this month of renewal, of newness. Now, our sages say that in every generation and in every single day, a Jew has to recall leaving Egypt. We're like obsessed. We're obsessed with leaving Egypt. It's like all we think about. And as we're starting to realize, it's so important, because freeing our inner self, our soul, from the constraints of the physical world is what a lot of Judaism is about. That's why we're so obsessed with it. And what are our Egypts? What are our limitations? It could be sadness. It could be anger. It could be impatience. It could be a numbness spiritually, like we don't feel much. Every day we're tasked with trying to transcend our inner Egypts. And that's why we're such an emphasis in Judaism on leaving Egypt. So I want to pause for a second. And I'm curious, based on what we're starting to say, does anybody want to either share verbally or write down in the chat box, what do you feel is your Egypt, or maybe an Egypt today in society a lot? Like, what does freedom mean to you? What does it mean to be free?
It's meant to be free to follow God's will, but freedom is often interpreted differently by modern society, unfortunately. But maybe it's freedom to be to grow spiritually.
Isaac, what's freedom? So you're saying a deep idea, which is you're almost jumping the gun and getting to what I want to say. So I appreciate the knowledge, which is the idea that freedom, a deeper freedom, is like a meaningful spiritual life is actually real freedom. We'll talk about that a little bit. Very nice. Anyone else? Isaac, is being in Poppy's scarf freedom? That's true freedom. Anyone else want to write in the chat? But what does freedom mean to you? Maybe it means to be physically free, to not have any dictator, to have, I'm sure in Putin's eyes, he's freeing Ukrainians. They might not agree with that, but. Okay, let's look into some of the concepts of freedom and really dive deep into this. What freedom means. So, Felicia adds, freedom to be who you really are. That's a great one. Freedom to be who you really are, because most of us are not being ourselves. We're trying to dictate ourselves, mold ourselves to fit society. So are you really free if you're always having to act the way others want you to, even subconsciously? That's not very free. The freedom to be who you are is a great one. Okay, first thing I want to talk about is, let's look at the story of the Jewish people, and then let's look at our lives. You can't free yourself if you don't know that you're in prison. If you don't know you're in darkness, you can't find light. There's the saying in Judaism for the exile we find ourselves in. It's called choshech kaful umuchupal, a redoubled darkness. So the sages say, what do you mean a double darkness? Just darkness. What do you mean we're in a double darkness? And they say it means that it's so dark spiritually for us that we don't even know that we're in darkness. We think we're living in the light, live in San Diego, or even live in Jerusalem. Imagine you live in Jerusalem and you told that person you're living in exile. They'd say you're crazy, but they are. Until Mashiach comes, until we have clarity spiritually, until we don't lust after and are jealous and are short-sighted, and that inner exile is there until Mashiach comes. So the darkness that we live in is, most of us are kind of happy with where we're at. We don't even know we're in darkness. We mistake. Look at culture and society today. Look at the heroes in our culture, the people we look up to. I don't want to keep using the Will Smith example, but I would say he's one of the most exemplary Hollywood stars out there. And look what he did. So the idols, it's funny that it's called like Hollywood Idol or American Idol, right? But the people that we look up to and we mistake light when it's really a level of darkness. So that's the first step, is to know that we're not in the light yet, that there's a lot of places for us to grow. One of the worst traits is to think I've made it. It's good to be content physically with your wealth, but it's not good to be content spiritually and to say, oh, I've made it. I don't have any more improving to do. I don't have any Egypts. I'm already liberated. Next thing, once you have that, once you realize, it's not to become despondent, not to despair, because we have to know, according to what we learn from our people, is that redemption is always possible. The Jewish people, they say, reached the 49th level of impurity. They almost reached a level of no return. But we don't believe in Judaism that there is a level of no return. And they believe that salvation would come, that there would be redemption. And there's a saying that nothing stands in the way of teshuvah. Nothing stands in the way of repentance or return. There was a sage that said that, because there's a belief in Judaism that we're talking about time, that every day of the week corresponds to a millennium, to 1,000 years. That Sunday is the first 1,000 years of history. Monday is the next 1,000 years of history. So Shabbat corresponds to the year 6,000 to 7,000. And because Shabbat is a taste of redemption, we say that that redemption has to come by the time the Hebrew year 6,000. And we're now in 5782. Don't forget that you're able to take in Shabbat early as Friday afternoon. So we're already in that time on a cosmic level. We're already in Friday afternoon in the history of the calendar. And there was a sage who said that even if Mashiach hasn't arrived and it's the year 5,999 and it's the last day of the year, it's the last hour of the day, and it's the last minute of the day, I have complete faith and trust that Mashiach will arrive. That mentality of total faith and trust is that it's never too late. It's never over. Once you have the self-awareness and you have the trust and faith, the next step is to free yourself, if not yet physically, in the mind. Your inner mindset is more important than your physical situation. The life starts within, inner-outer approach. To imagine a better reality for yourself. That's where the first step goes. I'm sure if somebody leaves prison or is in a down state, they'll all tell the person, first step is visualize a better version of yourself. Imagine that life could be better. Even if you're not yet there, even if you're living in a crack house, imagine that there could be better. That's the first step. I heard a beautiful idea this past week. I think that when Miriam, Moshe's sister, when Yocheved puts him in a basket down the river and gives up hope, but Miriam runs and follows the basket. And it says that she watched from afar. And that can symbolize the concept of having this positive imagination. Watching from afar means you can look out into your future and imagine a better future. You can imagine and watch for things to get better in the future. And it's very difficult for us because we have around 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and about 80% of them are negative thoughts. So our natural mind is sabotaging that positive imagination and those positive thinking. And when we really think about it, who is really free? Who is more free? The most powerful, wealthiest person on earth who's depressed because of something going on in their life, or somebody in physical prison, but that person has realized the reason behind what's going on and they've come to like an epiphany and to an enlightened state? Who's really free? Who's truly free in that moment? One is in the shackles of the emotions and of their mind, and one is internally free. And that's Dr. Viktor Frankl's book about Man's Search for Meaning, is the idea that I have to find the quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. I'll look it up for you right now because it's one of my favorites, and I think it's worth reading. Because he wrote a book about what he learned in the concentration camp about the people that had meaning in their lives are the ones that survived. And he said, I had wanted simply to convey to the reader, by way of concrete example, that life holds a potential meaning under any conditions, even the most miserable ones. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I mean, it doesn't get much more powerful than that. Somebody who experienced those evils. I don't know how many of you in San Diego are familiar with Dr. Edith Eger, but she is of that ilk as well, that mentality. She doesn't give power to the Nazis to decide how she is going to approach life. That was her, and she was close with Dr. Frankl as well. So the first step is the mind. Free ourselves from limiting ourselves of what we think we're capable of what we really are, defining ourselves in negative ways. We're more than that. The next step after thinking about it is speaking it into reality, speaking about our redemption. If you notice in the Torah story, when the Jewish people are enslaved, we don't really hear from them much. They don't seem to resist. We don't hear of them talking, or there was too much trauma. It seems like they became a bit lost. We do know that they kept their individual dress and they kept certain things. But for the most part, they were lost as a people and as individuals. They seemed to have been lost. It was only when they finally groaned, they cried out, that God heard their cry, right? Like they verbalized it. They really brought it to the fold. And we know that Pesach is Pe-sach. Pe is the mouth, and Sach is speaking. Pesach means the mouth that speaks. So speaking about a redeemed life is a major step after thinking it. And what does it mean to speak it out into reality? That can be verbal, like, literally creating affirmations and speaking it into reality, talking to friends about your future and how things can talk it out and bring it out into reality that way. But it can also be through writing words, through journaling. It can be through singing. There are artistic ways. There are ways to express a better possible reality for yourself outwardly. It's not enough to have it in your mind. We have to start to bring it out into reality. The next step after trusting, thinking, speaking is action. Notice that when the Jewish people do leave Egypt, and by the way, before they left Egypt, they did the Paschal lamb and the blood on the doorpost, which was something that took a lot of courage to do, action. But really, when they reached, I like the example of when they reach the Sea of Reeds and the Yam Suf, and there is a moment where some are praying, some are crying, some want to return to Egypt. We're told that there were 4 different camps of people at that time. God basically tells Moshe, why are you praying? Act, move. And Nachshon, the son of Yehuda, Nachshon ben Aminadav, Nachshon from the tribe of Yehuda, starts walking into the water, and then it splits. That it's not enough to pray or to hope or to speak, but we have to live it. We have to live a freed life. We have to trust that the sea will then split for us, that what appears to be insurmountable will make way for us when we start living that true reality. And what is that true reality? What is the free life we keep talking about? The first step to a free life is what my father was talking about, is that a meaningful life, a life of meaning. What does God say when he wants to take them out of Egypt? He says, Moshe, when you take the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this very mountain. He's saying, like, I'm not freeing you from Egypt just to free you so you can wander wherever you want. I'm going to bring you to the Torah. I'm going to bring you to Mount Sinai, the holiday of Shavuot, and you're going to receive that connection to me through the Torah. Now, doesn't that seem like another form of servitude? God is freeing them from one ruler to make himself the next ruler. What kind of freedom is that? So there's a concept of life isn't a freedom about freedom from only. It's not about freedom from oppression. It's also about freedom to something. And that freedom to something means a freedom to live a life without being a servant to our lower self. A life of meaning and purpose means living your life that's not in servitude to our base desires of the animal soul within. And we're going to elaborate on this a bit more soon, what that means. Freedom also has to do with checking your immediate reaction to things, controlling your immediate reaction. Like we saw with the Will Smith, Chris Rock. An emotional feeling, if you're acting on it without using your mind, that is not freedom. You can say no to the negative emotion and say, I'm going to go higher than that. I'm going to act higher. I am not that person. I'm better than that. Paro represents the ego. Moshe says, no, I'm for something higher. So if someone wrongs you, you don't have to be a slave to the response. You have free choice. You can say, I'm not going to react emotionally to that. And I can free myself from any of those immediate reactions of greed or lust or temptation. Another freedom is freedom from our fears and our limiting beliefs. If you think about how the freedom from Egypt began, Moshe decided to look at the burning bush. And God says, take the shoes off your feet. Feet, leg in Hebrew is regel. Regel is also ragil. Ragil means normalcy, or regular in English, comes from the same word. It's the idea that God is telling Moshe, I'm going to now take you out from what you believed before or what you thought was reality, your regular way of looking at things, your limiting beliefs of what you thought was possible, and I'm going to take you somewhere higher. And we were talking a moment before about controlling your immediate reaction, about what it means to not be a slave to our animal soul or to our limiting immediate reactions. Pesach is all about eating matzah. Matzah is the poor man's bread. It's simple, it's humble. Bread, chametz, is puffed up. It's big. It represents being full of oneself, full of your own wheat, of your own flour, and that is the ego. And by the way, if you notice in the word matzah, the hey, the last letter hey, has an opening to go up and down. It's open. Chametz is the same letters as matzah, except with a chet, which is closed at the top. It represents ego, is what God says, someone with ego, I can't dwell with that person. There's no space for me. And ego is like, I'm never wrong. Life is centered around me, not about others. And when you're able to check your ego and act humble, it seems like you're negating yourself, but you're actually freeing your soul. When you do mitzvot, or you do good things for other people, or you do stuff for God, you're not negating your freedom. You're freeing yourself from the obsession of your self-serving ego. And when your soul descended down to your body, it yearns for these few moments in your life where it's able to liberate itself from that. It yearns for a chance to pray, to learn, to do mitzvahs. That's what it wants. So you're really actually freeing that side of you. So again, it's like looking at yourself on layers. One layer of yourself just wants to be free, wants to eat ice cream on the couch and watch Netflix and shout at the person that cut you off in traffic and not care about anybody. And that's great. It feels fun for a while. But there's a deeper side of you that will never be fulfilled through that. And it gets its joy from the hard stuff. Not always hard, but the stuff that is counter that, which is transcending your own needs all the time, doing something for someone else. I mean, having children is would probably be, or being in a marriage is probably the ultimate expression of that, of doing that, or being being a soldier in a war, or something where, at the end of the day, you could say, why in the world would you want to sacrifice for a greater cause or something more? But anybody will tell you that those were the moments they felt most alive. Those are the moments where they felt something they could have never felt if they just lazed around and lived in their own opulence and pleasure. There's something to that, which is, we need a little more time for another class. I want to kind of start to wrap up the idea of freedom with this, that how do we achieve the lasting freedom is through Pesach, but also the 7 weeks after Pesach leading to Shavuot. These 7 weeks from Pesach onwards until Shavuot is like one journey of freedom. And what are the 7 weeks about? They're about harmony. They're about disciplining everything and harmonizing everything together. That discipline equals freedom. That what does it mean to be free is not doing what you want whenever you want. I mean, addicts do that too. Judaism says real freedom is when no temptation will rule you no matter what. Is when you're not enslaved to your impulse. Like when people say Shabbat observance is so restrictive. So your initial impulse is like, yeah, kind of, but I do it for the cause. But the truth is, when you really think about it, and as you grow older, you realize that our enslavement to technology, our enslavement to work, our enslavement to all these outer things, Shabbat allows us to focus on things that actually matter and is a freedom for us. It frees our deeper self to be itself. And that goes for all the mitzvot. Prayer, I was thinking about prayer the other day. Like every morning I pray for 45 minutes to an hour, but it's actually in those moments that I have clarity and I can take a breath. And it's those moments that I actually feel free, even though it's a discipline, it's a routine. And that's with everything. Ask anybody who goes to the gym every morning or has a certain routine, whatever that routine is, something they're committed to. They don't feel enslaved. When they push the button on the alarm, they do. But in general, they feel that this is the one time that they can take control. And having intentional structure is what creates freedom. That living a life without any boundaries, to do anything at all times, will not help your best self excel. Having beliefs that you stay true to is something you really feel proud of, and is like your North Star, is something you can build your life around. And Pesach represents that to the fullest, right? Pesach is the ultimate expression of structure leading to freedom. What does a Pesach Seder actually mean? Pesach means leaping, right? God, so to speak, leaped over the homes of the Jewish homes and during the death of the firstborn. Seder means order, meticulous order. It's two opposites, the paradox. Pesach, leaping, order. Pesach is leaping through life in an orderly way. It's having a systematic program, which is the Torah, showing us how to leap to new and greater heights in a specific kind of way. So it's actually the spiritually rooted customs and the ritual that we do that enable us, so the systematic way that enables us to leap to heights that we could have never done just through spur of the moment. It's a balanced order that leads to transcendence. You still got to have time to be spontaneous and jump on a plane and go to Tzfat or Italy or connect to God in some way. Like, do your thing. But we have to look at Torah mitzvot and the ritual of Judaism as opportunities that have been given to us to deepen our connection and our practice that we couldn't do if we were just haphazard with our connection. You see this a lot. I see this a lot with people today with, psychedelic drugs and different. It's spur of the moment, and it's it can have good effects for some and different effects for others. And going to music festivals and doing these things, these are all good to be spontaneous, but you have to have a certain discipline, a certain loyalty and consistency to your belief system. Okay, finally, I want to close off this part with the idea that God tells Moshe before they leave Egypt, he says, please take treasure from your Egyptian people. Take gold and silver and treasure out with you. God rarely says please, like emotional plea. I think with Abraham taking Yitzchak as a sacrifice, God says please. There's a few times when he knows it's something that's like beyond human understanding, but he wants us to do it anyways. That's where the please usually comes in. Why is it beyond human understanding to take treasure from Egypt? Seems pretty simple enough. But at this point of the class, I think we realize that the stories of the Torah are internal as well, are always. What does it mean for us today to leave Egypt with treasure? If Egypt represents darkness and enslavement and constriction and anxieties and addictions and all that stuff and hitting rock bottom, then God asking us to take treasure is saying it's not enough that you're going to improve your life and you're going to leave Egypt and you're going to free yourself. That's amazing, but that's not enough. I'm asking you to look at those dark moments, to look at that side of yourself and take out riches, take out treasure from that experience. That in the darkness of your life, please search, reflect, find Hashem in those moments of tears. Notice that in the fire of the kiln, that the pottery emerged from that it wasn't just fire, that all those times in your life were just out to get you, there was nothing constructive that came from it. That every Egypt in our life is crafting us into the person we're meant to become. That it's not enough to leave Egypt, we have to take out riches and learn from those experiences because everything happens for a divine reason, that everything is a gift. And just to close off with a story on that, there was an elderly woman in China. The story goes that she every day would go, she'd take 2 buckets to the well, she'd walk a few miles, take the water in the buckets and come back home. And one of the buckets had a crack in it, and it started getting depressed because it noticed that on the way back to the village, it was spilling out water all the time. And by the time they got to the village, it was only like half a bucket of water. And it cried out to the woman in the tale. And she said, you know what? Tomorrow, I want you to pay attention. So tomorrow she goes down to the well, she fills the buckets with water. And as they're walking, again, the water's starting to spill out and the bucket feels depressed. And she says, I want you to look around, pay attention. And he looks around and the cracked bucket sees that there are flowers blooming all around the fields that they're walking in. And she says, you see those flowers? That's from your cracked bucket. That is from all the times we were walking and you spilled out water as you came. That in the imperfections and the flaws in our life and the stumbling is actually from those experiences what can grow the most beautiful flowers, the most growth. They're not happening for no reason, but that human quality to who we are is really what Hashem desires. And for us to see that in our lives. There's, why do we fall to begin with? Why do we mess up? So there's an idea I've been thinking about and learning about, that there's a famous Jewish psychologist from that escaped Nazi Germany named Erich Fromm. And he believed in a theory of personality that all of us have 2 primary needs, the need for freedom and the need for belonging. That from the moment we leave our mother's womb, we miss the comforting embrace space of that experience. That a human's main desire is simply to be held. And not just from then, but according to Torah, according to Judaism, the moment that the soul leaves the embrace of the Shekhinah, of the feminine divine presence, it longs for that connection as well. So we desire not only to be held physically, but also psychologically. We want to be held by others, to be seen by others, to be fully understood by others, to be complimented, to be told we're good enough, that our desire for even success is our desire to be held in a higher esteem by others. And that's why we look for various vices, we look for quick fixes, because the word in Hebrew for worries or anxieties or issues is daga, daga. Daga is the same numerical value, gematria, of ahava, of love, 13. So addiction and worries are simply misplaced desire for love. It's a desire for belonging. It's a desire for transcendent connection that's manifesting in these ways. And while feeling any of these short-term fixes is very validating, very satisfying, it's ultimately never going to be enough. And King David says in Psalm 22, Mi beten imi eliata, from the womb, from the belly of my mother, you are my God. And then he says, be not far from me because trouble is near. What King David is saying is that, don't worry, even now, at any moment, you can tap into a spiritual awareness that you are being held by the divine presence right at this moment. By having dat, by having awareness, you can access this truth that we are always in the embrace of the Shekhinah, of Hashem. So if you're open to it, I want to close off with a short meditation, which is what I like to do, because it's very nice to talk about ideas in theory, but we also want to feel it. We want to bring it from mind to heart and to body. So if you're willing to just close your eyes for a moment and to relax your body, feel any tension in your body now that's could be in your shoulders or any part of your body. Scan your body and just start to slowly release the tension. You know, Abraham Joshua Heschel said, just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. So it's good now to take a moment to just be. And let's take a couple deep breaths together. You breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Let's take 2 more big breaths like that. In through your nose and out through your mouth. 1 more deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And let your breath return to its natural rhythm. And like we said before, just relax your cheekbones, forehead, shoulders, hands, stomach and legs and feet, toes. And I want you to transport yourself in your mind to leaving Egypt, to the moment that our people left Egypt. It's known that it was around midnight time. And it's not just a fun exercise. The Arizal, major Kabbalist, says that the last generation before redemption is a reincarnation of the generation that left Egypt, which could very well be us, that we were there at that time. And you're packed with all of your things. Everyone is hustling around. You can't believe that you're finally being freed from servitude that you've been in for all that you've ever known. And as liberating and as exciting as it feels, there's also a great sense of the unknown. That you're about to embark on a journey that could lead anywhere. But instead of fear, you feel trust. You know strongly that there's a guiding divine force that has your back, that's going to lead you on this journey through the desert. And just feel now into that deep trust that you have. Even as you're about to embark into the vast desert of the night. Gam ki elech begates halmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. And now, a few days later, there's sunshine, you're walking in the desert with your people, everything's good. The trauma and darkness of Egypt feels like a distant dream. And you reach the sea. And as you reach the sea and you turn around, you hear a rumbling, a thunderous noise coming from the approaching Egyptian army. And a feeling of desperation wells up inside of you. A feeling that no matter how much you think you're free or not, and you turn to Hashem in prayer, knowing that hope is never lost, no matter how dire the circumstance seems. And you watch in shock, you watch in awe as one man, Nachshon, starts walking into the water. And the water rises to his stomach and to his neck and to his nose. And as it goes over his nose, the sea splits. The raging waters peacefully part, and you step on dry land. Surrounded with waves of water 2 miles high. And imagine what that moment feels like. Knowing that even amidst the darkest moments, the most helpless moments, you're always being held by Hashem. You'll always make it to the other side better off than before. That it's never too late. All we have to do is after we fall, we have to keep walking like Nachshon, keep going. And I want you to take a final moment to feel yourself walking through the sea with the waves all around you and that feeling of joy and trust. And whenever you're ready, you can slowly move from the seashore of the Egyptian desert back to the seashore of the Western Californian desert. And slowly, whenever you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes and stretch out your neck and your body. Does anyone want to share anything that they, how it felt or what it did for them? I was able to employ my ocean drum. So this is to mimic the sound of the waves. So that was fun to do. I don't know how it came out on Zoom, but yeah. No need to share. You can write in the chat box. What for you stands out about freedom or about this evening?
It's just lovely to hear, because I grew up completely secular, and literally Passover was just everything literal, like, oh, eat your matzah, don't eat chometz. There's this story, and you read literally the word. There's no inner freedom, you know, all the deeper meaning of what Passover is. It just was zero. You know, it's like another world. I don't know if other people had the same experience as me, but it was just a literal eating matzah and don't eat bread, and maybe let's quickly go through this story fast before people get too hungry. And that really, that was Passover.
Yeah.
Most of my life was like that. So it's a lovely change to see the deeper meaning.
Awesome. Yes. Yes. Most people probably feel the same way.
Yep.
About a lot of things in Judaism. Yeah.
That was a very interesting class. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was very good.
I'm glad. And just to take with us as we're going into the Seder, and we're going to be eating our matzah, we're going to be drinking our wine, we're going to feel physical freedom, we're going to recline to our left. Let's remember that we want to receive this energy from Hashem at that time. We want to tune into this special Pesach energy, and we want to think about, where in my life do I feel the most limitation? Where emotionally, physically, spiritually, where would I like to transcend more? And let's tap into that energy of freedom, that this is really the time to do that reflecting and to take advantage of that special time that we're in. And
have a look at the comments, Daniel.
Yeah, very